You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
All right, well, welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. I am your host, Steve Hutt. Now, if you're a seven-figure founder and you're listening right now, I can guarantee that you're probably dealing with something, it feels like a little dirty secret in our industry. And, I think while everybody's celebrating success on LinkedIn, and I think behind the scenes, I think you're likely drowning in a lot of, operational chaos. I think maybe working long hours and feeling like maybe you're the bottleneck in the business. And I think, here's the thing, I think the skills, and this is something that's, this is kind of a saying that's been around a while, but the skills that got you to seven figures aren't necessarily the same skills that are going to get you to eight figures. And that's exactly why I have today's guest on. It's Leon van der Laan, and he is actually I read his LinkedIn profile, but he refers to himself as a leadership architect. It's really quite interesting. And he spent the last 5 years really helping 7 and 8 figure e-commerce founders really to escape what he kind of calls this founder mode. And and it states that he's micromanaging everything. And then I think that in itself really becomes the ceiling of their own growth because they're micromanaging everything. And I think what's interesting is he's created a really cool framework. I don't want to give it away what it is, but he has done some incredible work. I read some case studies online. There's a lot of people are quite happy with kind of what he has done to change the mindset of how you can actually build and kind of fundamentally change your business and grow it from 7 to 8 figures. So this is a unique episode for those that are a little bit further along their journey. But I'd say that if you are in the early stages of your business, I think there's a lot to learn about what you can do to set your business up for success moving to 7 figures. This show is going to be more specific also for those that are at 7 now and they want to get to the next level. So, hi, Leon. Welcome to E-commerce Fastlane.
Hey, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I know our time zones are massively misaligned. You're in Lithuania at the moment. I'm here in Vancouver in British Columbia, but I appreciate the hustle to make it work this evening for you. I want to talk a little bit about, this is kind of like an important thing. There are a lot of 7-figure founders that are out there, and there is this pattern that you have noticed with these 7-figure founders, and they seem to hit a ceiling. I don't know if it's a $2 or $3 million ceiling, whatever it is, and I think team performance will start to drop, and they seem to be working more and more hours. Can you talk a little bit about what you have found and maybe some leadership mistakes that some of these founders are making as they continue to grow their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that the ceiling differs a lot from brand to brand. I've seen brands stagnating at 5 million. I've seen brands stagnating at 20 million. As a matter of fact, I had a very interesting discussion on Monday with one of the founders that I'm coaching at the moment, who runs a 30 plus million euro D2C brand, 25 plus people, and is actually still kind of in the founder mode. And he says, I could probably push this towards the 9 figures, but at what cost? Right. And that is the key question, because the longer you wait with making the transition, the more it's going to cost you in terms of loss of profit. You probably pay it with burnouts. And you might even run into huge risks that you were just blind to because you were in the hustle modus, because in the hustle modus, it's all about getting shit done. And it's not about being strategic and looking broader to your business. So I think it all comes down to, you have to start mastering delegation in order for your organization to scale while you're scaling your revenue. So you probably know, Steve, as well, that, there's this notion that it's all about more and more and more and faster revenue. And the organization is kind of forgotten. And that works until like 15 people or so. And then suddenly everybody's like, okay, I've hit this 15 people mark. Revenue does great, but why the fuck everything stopped working right now? And that's because you haven't been early on starting to delegate start with low leverage tasks, right? Like low leverage stuff. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to leadership.
I find it interesting. I think there is, you talked about the hustle culture as guilty as charged in that same thing, being a solo founder. I do have a small team now, being kind of post Shopify. But I think the dark side of the hustle culture is, I think it, and at least in the early days of this, it kind of glorified the path to success, so to speak, meaning that you did the sweat equity, you did whatever it took to kind of get to that level. You say, I'm going to outwork everybody. And that's fair enough, maybe to a certain degree. But I think, and you're probably well aware of this more than anybody, but the mental health deterioration that happens, and the stress and the burnout and the perfectionisms and all the craziness that goes along with that. Can you talk a little bit about that? I just want to make sure that we set the stage a bit about this is what sometimes gets a lot of brands to where they are today, but at what cost?
Absolutely, Steve. Like, look, we're talking about D2C brands right now, but in every organization, if you're being the bottleneck and you're trying to hold all the balls in the air, you're going to have to pay a price with your energy, with your, indeed with your mood, your mental well-being. And to be honest, I've been that young leader myself multiple times when I had to reinvent myself, starting with 5 people teams and working my way up to 3,500 people size teams. And at every stage I had to reinvent, but I didn't. So I had to pay this with burnouts because I kept on stepping into the bottleneck trap. And so, yeah, I always say to my clients, I'm not here trying to change your work ethic. If your work ethic is to put every hour of daylight of your living non-sleep life, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't do that. I'm here to say you that slow with clarity is a lot quicker than fast with a blurry vision. And so how much hours you want to spend into your business is up to you, but you have to work on reducing the amount of hours you spend on operating your business. And I think there's a direct correlation, and you probably experienced this yourself as well. The less you're involved in the details, the less you're draining your cognitive energy. And the more cognitive energy you have, the more you can put this into high leverage, mid to long-term stuff that really grows your business sustainably.
Yeah. I'd also add too that I think there's a lot of like physical health consequences that kind of go along with this kind of hustle culture. I know I remember reading something, just not just the sleep deprivation side of it, but just a lot of times it's poor nutrition. A lot of times it even is like cardiovascular problems. Like I don't want to laugh about it, but I think there's a lot of issues of heart disease and stroke and other things. As weird as it sounds, I think there's a stress hormone that happens and it's not good overall net. I mean, it's not a health episode today, but I guess my main point was that, hey, you know what? It seems glamorous. I'm having this hustle culture and doing whatever it takes. I know you said I'm not here to tell people what their work ethic is supposed to be, but at the end of the day, I really feel that there can be a lot of challenges with strictly only that mindset. And I think it creates a lot of false promises about what it means to be successful and get the recognition and all that stuff. But, at what cost, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I always have this analogy about, if you look into the sports world, you have this top 1% athletes. What are they really good at? They train really hard. Yeah, but how can they train really hard every day? They focus a lot on recovery. So if you're running a top 1% DTC brand, which you are when you're in the 8 figures, you're like in the top 1% of DTC brands. You should focus on recovery because you're like a business athlete in a way.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. What I want to talk about now is, I did research about this remote framework. Your company is remote.company. I'll have all the details in the show notes and stuff. But can you talk a little about this framework and how it helps founders, I think it's almost like, I think the pinnacle is like these self-managing teams is kind of from what I get, the gesture met. Can you talk a bit about like how you believe like a store founder who has maybe 10 or 15 employees, like how do you believe first of all, what is the framework? And then how do you believe that it could be successful for them?
Yeah, totally. Look, when you want to build a self-managing organization, which is necessary when it grows past like the 15, maybe 20 people mark, it is, there's also this notion about you don't need motivation, you just need discipline, right? Yeah, maybe for you as a founder, you can push yourself through that. But people in the organization, they are different. Otherwise, they would have been founders themselves. So you need to understand what drives my people. There's actually a great book out there. It's called Drive by Daniel Pink. You probably know it.
I
And yeah, me too. I read it like 3 times back and forth. And the notion in the book is that there's an inner system in people that great organizations know how to activate. It's basically turn on, and that is intrinsic motivation. So I'm big on intrinsic motivation. And I've started my corporate leadership career 20 years long at age 17. And I had my first leadership role actually at that age. And so for me, a very large, multifaceted, complex organization, it just became my second nature because I was doing it for so long from so young. So when I wanted to build a remote framework, I really wanted to distill the whole, how an organization functions. I wanted to distill it in what is the absolute bare minimum that every organization needs to have to grow to the next level. So my framework will definitely help you from like 15 to 100 people. When you go from 100 people, you need, again, different stuff, okay? But it's like every stage you need to reinvent. So what we're looking at is like, okay, what does an organization need to be self-managing? We have to start with intrinsic motivation. All Fortune 500 companies are obviously in the Fortune 500, the most valuable companies on the planet. Why what do they have? Well, they have all mission, vision, values. Okay? That's the core of your culture. You can't build a self-managing organization if you do not have people on board that believe in your cause, that believe in what you stand for, and that believe in what you want to achieve. Okay? If you have people on the team that don't believe that or actually don't care about it, you're never going to build this self-managing organization. So that's like pillar number 1 in my framework. Build that. Okay? Then what I usually see in founders is that their growth ambition becomes the goal for the company. And their growth ambition is usually, I want to make 100 million, right? Or even more. Great. But your people don't care because what's in it for them? They're not seeking just money. They're just not seeking just a piece of that 100 million. They seek much more. So what you need to do is to understand what are the goals we need to set for ourselves that will eventually get me my ambition goal. But you have to frame those goals in line with your mission, your vision, and your values. And that's what I call meaningful goals. They're not empty, fluffy goals. They become meaningful goals, okay? Because if I believe in an organization, what we're doing and what we want to achieve, and I see that the goals we're setting for us are in line with that, hey, maybe I would actually feel excited to go after those goals, okay? So it's like the second step, the second pillar in the framework. Great, but people need clarity and accountability on execution, right? So that we do in pillar 3. We implement a lean version from OKR framework. I think one of the best goal setting frameworks and workflow actually that I built in ClickUp with my clients that give people super clarity on how do we slice these big pies into small pieces that we can actually eat. So that's what we do in pillar number 3. Execution, workflow, the system basically, right? And then pillar number 4, what we're focusing on is we're implementing RACI framework. This is a tool from originally from project management that I've adapted in such a way that brings immense clarity on who's accountable for what, who's responsible for what, who's consulted and who is informed. And this gives the organization clarity on where do we have too much load, where do we lack resources in terms of people, where do we need to build communication lines, feedback loops, where do we need to step away maybe as founders, right? Because we see that we are too heavy loaded there. And we pair that also with organizational KPIs. As you probably know, D2C brands are heavy on marketing. So they tend to be blind spotted to other metrics that matter as well. So what I do then with the founder is to look at zooming out, what are the 5 ± 2 key performance indicators that will not tell us if we are good at marketing, but will tell us if we as an organization are actually achieving and going efficiently towards our goals. And I believe that's like the fundamental essential of any organization out there. And that's what I do with the remote framework.
That's amazing. So it actually makes me think, and I wrote them all down here. I'm on page 2 already, and we've only been recording for 18 minutes. So I'm taking some good notes here, and I really appreciate your transparency about kind of what you've built here. I think there is a market reality right now that's actually going on, and I think this actually fits in perfectly for having stronger kind of leadership systems. But like I think about like rising ad costs, I think about tighter margins, like potential tariff kind of situations, all that kind of stuff. And so I think having stronger leadership systems, it seems that would likely help a founder stay more profitable when a market's getting challenging because of these different pillars that you just talked about. Am I on the right page here? Am I on the right track?
Totally. Take two D2C brands, okay? They both do, let's say, 15 million in revenue annually. They both have 15 people in the team. And they both get slammed with the same challenges. Now, one organization is very transactional. They micromanage, they push people, they don't really know where they're going, they're really performance-based. Now we have on the other side an organization that clearly knows where they're going. They have an articulated culture. They have people that really align with their culture. And they have systems in place that allow people to work autonomously, to tap into their creativity, where they're allowed to make mistakes, where they learn from their mistakes, where they have a growth perspective. Guess which of the two organizations is going to outperform which? It will be always the one that has this clear culture and goals and clarity towards the future. It's like a no-brainer. So when external circumstances are changing, it's actually exposing the real companies from the money, just the money chasers. And one thing that I see in the founders I work with is that what they have all in common is that they think beyond money. Yes, they have their ambitions of what they want to achieve, because it's still a very competitive game and they see reward in achieving big numbers. It's just part of the industry we're in, right? But they have something else. They also have this inner drive to make an impact. And I think when you have people on your board that want to make the same impact as you, they are much more proactive and they see things coming before they happen. They're more creative in their problem solving. They are more willing to go the extra mile. And that is where right now in this situation, you'll definitely benefit from.
That's amazing. Now, what about like finding, I'm going to call them A players, but finding great team members that are in full alignment with, you said the mission and the vision and the values because I think finding A players for the business and keeping these team members, I really feel that, because without that, I think it actually slows down the business because you're hiring the wrong people. Mm-hmm, and so do you have any approach that people could learn from about like, how do you find A players? How do you, and it's not an HR podcast today, but it's so interesting to me about how to find the right people that are aligned with clearly mission and vision and value focused businesses.
Totally. Let's start with a small story. I worked with this large brand in Europe, 30 plus million, also in the beauty industry. Great team, great culture, like founders, young, early 20s, but so intelligent, so driven, so visionary for their age. Like, wow, what did I do when I was 20?
I know, right?
Okay, I ran a warehouse when I was 24 with 250 people. Okay, that was my accomplishment in the corporate, right? But they wanted to have this killer supply chain manager coming from like a huge, very successful DTC brand in Germany. Like they killed it in that brand. And her skills, wow, really, what a CV. And I said to them, I think the skills are great, but I had an interview with her. I know you guys, and I know that there is a misalignment with the culture. And you should hire for culture, not for skills. Okay. And they did it anyways, because they said, if we just have 1 year her on board, she will transform our supply chain and we will benefit from this. Well, within 3 months, she was gone. You had so much misalignment with her, and there were so much challenges, and sad for both, right? It was loss of time and energy for everyone. And with that said, I want to say that an A player in another company is not necessarily an A player in your company. And it's very important that you're finding somebody that has the skills, but above all, matches your values. Because you're 4 times more likely to find a right fit. And I have a friend in the recruitment agency who supports that with data. Value-based hiring is 4 times more likely to find the right person. And that's a lot, considering that hiring the person costs you about 1 yearly salary in total of that person.
Wow. It's interesting. Kind of reminds me when I got hired at Shopify, the salary was decent, but they really talk about, the total compensation wasn't always just the money. There were so many other pieces of the puzzle that went along with it. The autonomy was interesting. The time that they gave you for personal projects, even like some extra money, a very flexible vacation time. Some of them, in some cases, like in my particular role, it was unlimited vacation. You just go away whenever and if you and your lead agreed that it made sense, you could just do it. And you were fully paid at any time. So you want to go away for 3 or 4 weeks. Well, you couldn't go for a month in a row, but if 5 weeks or 6 weeks makes sense for you and your book of merchants are being taken care of because you've aligned yourself with other team members. So I think it's really interesting that these sorts of things, I think that's one of the early days in the Shopify Plus side of the business where it did really, really well because yes, great salary, but there were a lot of other perks and benefits in home office because we were a fully remote team kind of pre-pandemic. And so they gave you a lot of perks and benefits to say, hey, and on top of that, the whole premise of Shopify, and even to this day, is to make commerce better for everyone. Here I am years later, and I still know the slogan, and I know, building a path that leads to more entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. Like I know what it is, and I lived and breathed it. And I think, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I love this stuff. I want to help people. Oh, and the salary's pretty good. Oh, and the perks are pretty good. But overall, net, it was really all about the larger mission of the business. And no wonder Shopify has done its thing over the last 17 or 18 years now. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so important as well that you buy into the mission of a company.
Uh-huh. So I have a question to more around, I'd say like the future of kind of what's been happening right now, because you're front lines working with these founders and kind of getting them to the next level. The elephant in the room right now is everybody's looking for more automation. They're thinking about AI. There's increased competition. I think good founders, and maybe you can clarify some of this for me, but I think good founders really need to potentially adapt their leadership style to not just survive, but to thrive now. Because I think this market is really evolving now with using AI. It's not about firing a bunch of employees and having AI tools kind of run things. It's just not like that. But just what are you seeing on the ground today? Because the reason I'm asking this question is because I've had a lot of AI tool apps and marketing platform, different things. But founders, it's almost like a little bit of a shiny object syndrome going on. They're trying different things. They don't really want to screw up their business. So I'm just curious from your perspective, what you're seeing.
The evolution there has been so fast. It's
I know.
insane.
I know.
I've been last year in Budapest on Affiliate World Conference. They were talking about AI, and people that I met there who were running an e-com brand, it was my client. I visited them there. They said like, yeah, at some point we will do AI, but still, I think the output is not that good, and we can still do better ourselves. Then I went to Dubai in Feb. It was also AWC. Met other clients there, and there was already more speeches around AI, and whoa, it was already, where is this going, And now I was last week in Barcelona. It was the affiliate takeover conference there, meeting a client also and speaking to a lot of other founders there, not just in the DTC space for e-com, but also like agencies and affiliates. Man, everyone is freaking doubling down on AI right now. It's like, it's as if it hits the critical mass or something. And I think you should totally do that, because this is the Blockbuster story. You don't do it, just like Blockbuster didn't adapt to online streaming, you'll be very likely falling behind, because the development there goes so fast. And a few speeches of the bigger names, like Alex Fedotov was there also on stage, a lady from Mrs. Lakiani from Mind Valley. They had insanely good speeches about AI, and I was blown away how much this has evolved since the last conferences. So I definitely think that that's happening, but AI is AI. It is a tool, and you can never, as a leader, think that AI will replace great leadership, because people will be people, and people need, for now, still people leaders. And I'm happy to hear, though, by the way, that I ask every time, and they still want like flesh and blood coaches. So it seems like I'm for now still pretty much in business, Steve.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I know with the whole AI situation, like it really is. I agree with you. It's extremely transformative, kind of what's been going on right now. I think there are some significant brands know this, especially the marketers. They know there's some major core benefits of increasing sales and maybe better customer retention. And there's a lot of ways of analyzing data and making data-driven decisions and things. There can be some real technical things just to understand and kind of mitigate risk and stuff. So it's quite interesting, kind of what's out there. If AI is on your radar, for those that are listening right now, I have interviewed so many people in the last 6 months or so on most of the great tools that connect to Shopify. So check my back catalog, because you'll learn a lot about everything in there, from personalization engines and customer service engines and inventory and pricing and like marketing personalization. Anyways, it's all there. It's pretty cool. So my question to you now is, okay, so I think those that are listening right now are thinking, okay, if I'm a 7-figure brand, I'm running maybe 15, 20 team members, and they agree that there is this bottleneck that's happening in the organization, and there's this potential negative hustle culture negativity that can come out of it, or I think you have to be honest with yourself as the founder about actually how you're feeling, and actually what's actually going on with you. But if you believe that there is, you're listening today and you believe there's a need to kind of, how do I get to 8 figures? What's my exit strategy down the line? Because I think that's one of the big things that a lot of people have said is this, like, can the business run without you? Because it's fine to have a nice clean P&L and showing some great growth, but if you're trying to sell this business, and if you can't walk away from the business as the leader in the business because you don't have systems and processes in place, like all your frameworks you've discussed here, I know I've thrown a lot of things at you here. It's really interesting what I've learned today, and I think my listeners learned today. And like, I maybe kind of summarize, like, if there are people are listening and you're at 7 figures and this resonates, what do you believe some of the next steps might be so they can actually improve their organization?
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the things that I do in the one-on-one coaching also with, and next to the remote framework, I coach the founder one-on-one, and I call it leader mind coaching, because you can only manifest the transformation in your organization if you're willing to transform yourself as well. So to do that, we need to, let's say, install some leadership programs also in the mind, right? So I coach on that. And one of the exercises that I always do with them is like, okay, so let's assume, what is your growth ambition? And ambitious as most of the founders are, it's usually well into the 8 or even into the 9 figures, right? Says, okay, over which time frame do you want to achieve that, right? Say, well, 2 years, maybe 3 years, Okay, so how many founders are there? Well, we're 2 founders. Okay, so you're on the top of the organization. Awesome. Now calculate what every hour that you work is either an investment towards that growth ambition, that the revenue ambition, or it is a cost. Okay. So calculate this, and usually it's around like some company like 10,000 euro per hour, the other is maybe 8,000 euro per hour. That are the amounts when you calculate the work you put in over the time frame that you want to achieve the big revenue goal, and then divide it down to the hour basically. Okay, so you have to imagine that your hour cost 8,000 euro or $8,000. Now look at what you're doing that actually makes you throw this 8,000 euro in the bin.
Yeah.
And that changes the perspective. Because if you are spending an hour on shuffling through some documents that your accountant needs, you just spend 8,000 euro. You're never going to get back into the future. So start there and start on the bottom with looking what are these absolute, totally non-future revenue generating tasks or responsibilities that anyone could basically do, and just start hiring people for that and start delegating that throughout the organization. I think that's the absolute first step that every founder should do. What should I stop doing literally yesterday?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like you need to figure out and calculate exactly what you said. Calculate the value of your time and saying, of all the tasks that I do, does the task justify the rate?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then you need to outsource it to someone else to do it. Even if it's only 80% as good as you, at least it frees up your time to work on other higher value tasks that justify the value that you bring to the organization.
And it's not just the time, it's actually cognitive energy. Because
okay.
If you work on 100 small things or you work on 2 large things, you achieve a lot more because you have so much more energy available for those high impact stuff.
Yeah, this is amazing. So where do you think people should go next? There's early stage people that are listening right now. Do you have like a word or two advice for them that haven't quite made it to 7 figures yet, but they clearly have product market fit? They've probably migrated to Shopify Plus, to get better, rates for Shopify payments, and they, and some extra value added you get on the plus side of Shopify. So they're kind of, working their way through that. The reason I'm asking this question now is that I think there's a good chunk of those people listening right now, and people are actually planning and thinking about Q4 right now. There's a lot of BFCM and Q4 holiday time conversations, even though we're in summer right now. Like middle of August, all of a sudden, kids are back to school in North America, and all of a sudden, okay, now we really got to start get rolling here because, and we know how long containers take to get here. Are there tariffs on the goods? And there's a lot of things to think about. In these early stage people, is there any 1 or 2 little tidbits of advice you could give them today so they could have a successful Q4, or if it's anything to do with a mindset thing, a team member thing, any part of this frameworks that you think might be applicable to them?
So what I've seen in the space is that if you haven't made changes in the way how you operate your organization before quarter 4 really hits, don't do it during quarter 4, because all the changes you're doing to your organization, a change is disruptive. Okay, so it's disruptive to people's natural state. I would rather say, make sure you double down on what you know works in quarter 4, but make a plan for 2026 to say never anymore on this level of operation that we did it now, and make 2026 the year in which you're building out a self-managing aspect of your organization.
Now, what about those that are firmly planted kind of in that 7-figure range right now, but they feel they have that stagnant growth, or they've unfortunately had team members leave, or they've been fired, or whatever? So what's your thought process on that? And what do you believe in, how you can specifically help them break through?
Mm-hmm. All growth is created by people. So a transactional organization can go only so far. So if you're seeing a ceiling in your growth, it's probably because you have maxed out what you can achieve with being very transactional. So that's the moment where you need to start reinventing yourself as a leader and start understanding, how can I go beyond just offloading tasks to people and hiring just for performance, but start thinking about where do I want to bring this organization? Where do I want to bring this company? What essentially do I want to achieve with it? Why am I doing this business actually? And what I see with the founders that I work with, they are not at the stage where why, but every stage of any organization, the ones who started it are driving the results. But it's not anymore about you driving the results. It becomes about you creating the environment in which the results are being created by your people.
Right. I love that. This is amazing. So those 7-figure founders that are listening, so the early stage people, we kind of, let's not jostle too much up in the Q4 period. Let's work on some frameworks and some of the things that we've learned today with the remote framework for them moving into 2026. Those 7-figure people that you believe that you could help, what sort of next steps would you like to tell them and how they can interact with your company?
Yeah, so I have this audit that I do with 7-figure founders. And it's for founders who are like high 7 figures, maybe even already entering the early 8 figures. Usually I've done it from 10 people upwards, but let's say that the sweet spot is from 15 people onwards, because that's where the complexity starts to kick in really.
Yeah,
and
I could see that.
Yeah, is this audit, which is a leadership and organization audit. It's like 2 sessions where you work with me one-on-one with your co-founders on 36 statements that will help you understand where do you have friction and where do you have flow in your organization. And by understanding where you have friction, and obviously also it helps where to see where you have the flow, you understand where you need to put the focus on strengthening your organization. Because there's this notion, it's called organizational entropy. Maybe you've read Organizational Physics. It's a book. I don't recall the author right away. Lex Sisley. Great book. He talks a lot about organizational entropy, but see it basically as holes in a bucket. Okay. As a founder, the bigger your bucket gets, and the bucket is then, let's say, the organization, the bigger the bucket gets, the more holes there will be in, and you do not have enough fingers to close all the holes. So you need to build a better bucket, basically. And this audit will show you where the holes are, but also where the strong parts are, because there you can build, of course, when you have already strong aspects. So that audit gives great insights and is very valuable. It's always received really well by founders. And after that, you have like a roadmap on what to work on.
Beautiful. What I'll do is I'll add the link to the show notes and kind of put some potential next steps and how you can schedule a call and potential audit with Leon directly. So this is really cool. I've like I said, I'm on page 3 of notes. So this is like amazing. I've learned a ton. I know my listeners have learned a ton too today, and I appreciate you and giving back to the Shopify ecosystem and these founders. They really are creating impactful brands, there's no doubt, and the employees that hopefully are also mission and vision driven people also. If they're not, there is a framework to kind of get to that level and kind of move along to having a more impactful business. It doesn't necessarily directly rely on your sweat equity to get things done, right? It's the delegation side of it and removing these bottlenecks. So this has been really great recording today. So Leon, thanks so much for recording, and have yourself a great evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Same to you.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.